Yeah, so everybody, this is Adrienne Hall, our board member. Um, I'm actually not sure how long you've been on our board, Adrienne, because I know you're fairly recent.
Yeah.
Um, when were you brought on?
So I was brought on officially in February this year. So I
Oh, so
have,
brand new.
I'm a newbie to the board, to Greening Youth. And I have just kind of been, getting a feel for GYF and how everything is done and the different wonderful things that this organization is doing. Just a little bit about myself. I graduated from Spelman College, and I have master's in psychology. I got my master's at Clark Atlanta University. And so I have been working with Atlanta Public Schools Office of Early Learning for it's going on about maybe 11 years now. I am the school transition specialist. Formally, I've been doing this position for about a year, and I used to do family support services for their pre-K program, Atlanta Public Schools pre-K program. And I did that fairly for quite a long time. So, so this is a primarily new role for me, but I'm enjoying being on the board and getting to interface with GYF staff and just kind of getting to know just the great stuff that GYF is doing and how I can fit in and support and do the best that I can to promote all the great initiatives.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you on. I know Lauren really spoke highly of you. And back when she first introduced us, I was really excited to get to learn more about you, and especially with your career in, early childhood learning and working with Atlanta Public Schools. So as somebody who's, been through not APS, but the Fulton County school system. So, we're like neighbors. I
Mhm.
wanted to ask you, what does your day to day look like?
So my day to day, what my programs are primarily for getting kids in the early education field ready for kindergarten. So I do programs that work towards working with both the public schools as well as the early learning centers in the community within Atlanta. So the main part of it is making sure that there's that smooth bridge, that smooth transition from an early learning center into a school system. For parents, that is such a scary thing, to be going from either a smaller learning center or not even being in a center at all, like going from home to putting your child in a public school and not knowing what that entails. So part of what I do is I bridge that gap. I have conversations with early learning staff, center staff, and public school staff. I bring them together so that we can do some things to make sure that that gap isn't there, to make sure that they're communicating together, to make sure they're providing programming that makes parents comfortable with making that transition into school, so that they know, like, okay, who's their teacher? What is the school environment like? How do I fit in? How can I volunteer? How can I be a support to my child in this new environment? And how can I make my child feel comfortable? So it's all about making sure that these two entities are working together, because their kids, their kids are together. Their kids will eventually wind up in Atlanta Public Schools. And so it is important that we capture that age group so that once they get into school, there's a comfortability, there's a familiarity with the school. So, in getting those conversations going, I'm making sure that key staff from an early learning center would know who to contact from a public school if they have questions about curriculum, things like that. So, all of that is just pretty much a big part of what I do. And my day-to-day is either going out to visit those early learning centers and making connections with them, visiting the schools, making connections with the key people in the schools that I need to make sure that the early learning centers know. So right now I'm doing a kinder camp program, which is it's a 2-week program where kids from Atlanta that are rising kindergartners, and we're including rising pre-Kers into that program. They can have, it's just a snapshot of what kindergarten or pre-K would look like for them. And it's going to be done virtually this year. So pretty much that is a lot of what I'm doing today. I'm getting the program going, getting the advertisement about it so parents know how they can tune into the program, getting the content ready, working with different site administrators from the schools to make sure that they have their staff together, to make sure that they're providing the best programming for this upcoming kinder camp program, which is the end of July.
Wow, that is really important work. And that sounds very much like a job that's like really like it's sort of like a behind the scenes thing, but it's one of those jobs where if this wasn't here, then like it would just be like all out chaos.
Yes, I would agree with that. You know, it's not a position that's really out there where people can see you doing a lot of the stuff. It's really a lot of behind the scenes stuff, making sure that everyone knows what's going on, that we're all on the same page, that we're providing the best that we can so that we're supporting our kids.
Are a lot of people surprised about the position when you tell them what it is?
Yeah, pretty much. They have a lot of questions about it. When you say school transition specialist, they're like, okay, now what is that? Like, you know, what do you do? So it really, you know, the main goal of it, and part of Atlanta Public Schools Office of Early Learning, their goal is to make sure that all Atlanta children are ready for school, that they're thriving, that they have all that they need and equipped to have that fresh start in school. So, you know, when you say school transition specialist, you know, I make sure that they understand that the key is that we're trying to do the best that we can to provide the best experience so that kids are ready once they walk through that door. You know, it's not just about making sure that the kids are ready. The parents have such a critical role at this point in time, because a lot of it is new. If they don't have an older child, they don't know what to experience. So, you know, you want to do the best that you can to make sure that they're ready too.
And so I kind of wanted to follow up. So it sounds like you have a whole lot going on between like setting up schedules and programs, visiting actual centers and schools. So like, what's your favorite part or favorite aspect of the position?
My favorite part of the position really is doing that face-to-face and meeting with the different school staff as well as early learning staff. And my favorite out of the two really is working with the early learning staff, because, you know, I have been with the school systems for a long time. I've also worked with Fulton County Schools also, like you mentioned earlier. So, but that early learning center arena where you're really getting to know those teachers that have those babies from day one. Some of them have had them since they were infants, and they really know what it takes to make sure that, you know, the children's brains are developing, that parents know how to speak to children, because speaking and giving those kids that verbal contact at that time is critical for their learning. So I really enjoy meeting with early learning staff to just see what they do on a day-to-day basis and how critical their role is in making sure that our kids are ready for school, that they're that first point of contact, when, you know, and how they teach parents how to be a child's teacher, because they're their first initial contact, their parents. So it's wonderful to see how that all happens before they actually get to kindergarten or pre-K in the school setting. It's wonderful to see how that staff works and thrives in that way.
Yeah, I imagine so. Because like I myself, I don't think I went through an early learning center. I might have, and I just like completely forgot about it. Um, but yeah, that's always something that I really thought about is like, how do you take a child and like teach them like how to like read and how to speak and like all the different aspects of understanding language and math and context clues and really just understanding the world. And
Mhm.
that sounds like such a crazy position to me, because it's just like you're basically like taking this little mold of clay and like turning them into a person almost. It's just like one of those things where if you think about it too hard, your head starts to hurt again. um, but since you've actually been to some centers, I wanted to ask you, so what does or what do most of these centers and staff do on a day-to-day basis?
So on a day-to-day basis, depending on what grade they're working with infants, toddlers, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, even 5-year-olds, and some of the early learning centers have programs like after-school programs for older students too. So on a day-to-day basis, they're molding, they're working with every age group. They're teaching kids that socialization process, which is the biggest, one of the biggest things too, because you can teach academics all that you can, but the socialization part, social emotional learning is critical also at that age. So they're doing a lot of that. They're doing a lot of teaching kids how to share, how to just learn how to interact with other kids. And some of them may not get that at home if they're an only child. The early learning center area is where a lot of them may be getting that first outlook into that. So, the staff on a day-to-day basis, they're doing everything from, critical academics to social and emotional learning. They're providing workshops for parents to, on anything, ages and stages of development, on how to just kind of survive. Even right now during this time with COVID, it's a lot of, mental health things going on. People are trying to cope. So, a lot of the centers are doing some wonderful things on teaching parents how to cope and how to teach, they've never been teachers right now. So they're teaching parents how to cope as well as how to teach in, this whole environment of craziness that we're going through right now. So it is wonderful the things that they're doing right now just to kind of make sure that the kids and parents are just adjusting well and doing what they need to do. And some of them have been open during this whole um, period. Like a lot of the schools shut down in March, but a lot of the early learning centers have been open during this whole time because there are parents that are still working. There are first responders and healthcare workers that have been out in the field providing us help and services, and they need childcare. So a lot of the centers have been open and available for those people as well. So they have been tirelessly working right now. So I give my hat to them.
Yeah, that sounds like incredibly crucial work. And I don't know how they do it, but it's like they're magicians in there.
So it takes a lot of heart to be in the education field, like teachers and
Mhm.
anyone in the education field right now. It takes a lot of heart because nothing has stopped, even though COVID has come and schools are shut down and early learning centers may be shut down. There's some that are open, but nothing has stopped. We're still continuing to educate everyone, families, kids, even ourselves. So yes.
Yeah, and I feel like coming back from COVID, there's probably a lot more parents now who appreciate the difficulty of having to teach your child when they had to go home in March and see what it was like actually like to be a teacher. Because even being in the school system, I could tell it takes a very special type of person to want to do that sort of work and go through that stress on a day-to-day basis. And I think some of the best stories that I've heard from some of my own teachers have just like been when they've made that breakthrough with a student who either like wasn't really understanding or is coming from a difficult situation, And then, you can see like, or they would say you could see the light in their eyes as, they finally got it or they understood whatever it was that they were trying to accomplish. So it sounds like very rewarding, but very difficult work. And, teachers really are like the unsung heroes of our civilization. Because I really don't know where we would be if we didn't have you all working in these positions to make sure that we were raising, proper young men and young women to be our future, basically. So it's incredible work, and I just love talking about it. I have a cousin who's a teacher right now for, I want to say it's third grade, and she's been really enjoying that aspect too. But some days are better than others. But it's always fun to hear about what the kiddos get up to sometimes too.
It really
um,
is. Yeah.
so I did want to ask you, so you talked about like your favorite part of the aspect, but what tends to be like the most difficult part of dealing with transitions?
So I would say the most difficult part about it, at least for, in thinking about like what I do on a day-to-day basis. So I do a transition council, which, like I mentioned before, it's comprised of public school staff, whether it's teachers, principals, counselors, and early learning center staff, like teachers, their directors, center directors, all of that. And I talked about the best part was getting them together. Well, the hardest part is getting them together. The hardest part is getting them together because they all have different schedules. They have different schedules. They have buildings that they need to run, whether they're a principal or a center director. As a teacher, you have class, you may be meeting with parents in the afternoon. So schedules are so crazy. It is hard to kind of get everybody together at the same time. So attendance at the council meetings that I do are a little sporadic.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that I tried to do this year was to do like quarterly meetings instead of, before it used to be once a month. But once a month was like a lot for these different competing schedules, and you never know what would be happening at a school or at a center. And a principal would say that I can't come, or a teacher can't come because there's a staff meeting at the end of the day. So the most challenging part is trying to get everybody together. But now what COVID has taught us is that we can do things a lot differently right now. And we can do a lot of Skype. We can do a lot of Google Meets. We can do a lot of, Zooms. So I think moving forward, I have learned that, we have so many different outlets right now that we can use because of those competing schedules. Which will make it more convenient for people to attend. So, pretty much that's the hardest part, just trying to, get those competing schedules together, and, just working with so many different entities. You really have to kind of make sure that you're very project task oriented, and make sure that you have your schedules and everything in line, because it can get pretty hectic. It can.
Yeah, I'm sure with just the sheer amount of people, that's a headache in itself. Oh Lord. But so I did want to also ask you, so how does the scheduling and the meetings work with the different schools and learning centers? Is it like you'll take like a specific group of centers that are in one area and have a meeting with them, and then break it off into like another meeting with a different group in another area, or do you just try and get everybody at once?
So I'll give you a little background on APS, because it'll kind of help shape how I deliver the council. So APS is split into 9 different clusters, and they're all based on region, within Atlanta. And so I have, so right now I have 3 clusters going of council meetings, transition council meetings. So how I have the meetings are based on those clusters and the schools within those clusters and the early learning centers surrounding those schools and the clusters. So what I would do, like say, the Douglas cluster is one of the clusters I'll work with, and Douglas cluster has a couple of elementary schools that I would include. I'd call the principals, any staff that I know from the early learning arena in those schools, and I would invite them to a council meeting. And then I would call the early learning centers that surround those schools or that feed into those schools. So some of those kids that go to those early learning centers will eventually go into one of those elementary schools within that cluster. So the meetings that I have would be based on the schools in that cluster and the early learning centers surrounding them. So, and then the meetings would be held at, I try to mix it up. I'll maybe do like one meeting will be at an early learning center, and then the next meeting would be at a school, so that we can give, each staff some little flexibility, because, if one principal can't make it to this meeting at this early learning center, he can definitely make it to the one that's at his school. So just to kind of give them some flexibility and some breathing room to at least attend one of the meetings. Yeah.
Got you. Okay. And so is it like where if say you're a parent living within a specific cluster, your child has to go to the school that's in that cluster. They can't like switch to a different
Yeah.
cluster.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's how it is. Unless you apply for like a hardship within Atlanta Public Schools, you can do so, but there's a period of time that you can apply to do so, and then it's based on the principal if they have room or space at their school. But primarily, if you live within the zone of that school, that's the school that you would be attending.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay. Thank you. I was starting to like understand how the placement of the children go.
Mm-hmm.
And so you said you have 3 clusters going right now. So is it that you're only in charge of those 3 clusters, and then there are other transition specialists in charge of the others?
No, that would be me. That would be me. So, as I keep going, I'm starting to put together clusters in other meetings in other clusters. So like I'm looking to pinpoint like the Thero cluster and the South Atlanta cluster as a new cluster that we will be doing council meetings. So and APS is huge, so it takes some planning. It takes some time to kind of get those clusters running to the point where you're like, okay, I can move on and try to see if I can get something new going. And then COVID hit, so it was kind of like, the brakes got pumped. So now I have to kind of think of doing stuff a little bit differently to try to get some more clusters going.
Got you. And so let me ask you this, at least from a pre-COVID perspective, because it might have changed after. But how did I guess, based on like the school calendar, how was like your workload? Basically like after school had started going up to the end of a new year, was it like after school started, you would get like a bit more time to start planning for the next transition that would happen in August, or is it like basically constantly planning and juggling everything like throughout the year?
So it's really constantly in planning and juggling everything throughout the year, but there are times during the school year where like it does calm down a little bit for me, at least my work. I would say my most hectic time is starting from December all the way up until like now. Usually the start of the year is not as hectic for my position, mainly because a lot of my major programs happen during the summer. So, like now, my summer programs are gonna start to hit in July. And so the planning really starts for all of that in December. So from December, I'm like running all the way until summertime. And so the start of the school year, like August, like from, I would say, August till November is a little less hectic for me. I can do a lot of planning. I can do a lot of, reorganizing, restructuring if I need to during those months, which is great. And so, a lot of that time, I'm able to kind of assist a lot of the other outlets in the department if there's a need for it, because I have a little more downtime and I can kind of reach out and assist where it's needed.
Got you. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to ask that because I know, at least from a teaching perspective, they get that little bit of break with the summertime. So I was just curious as to if like you got a break once the transition already happened in August a little bit. Um, but yeah, it sounds like it can be pretty crazy basically
It
all
can
the
be
time.
pretty crazy. It really can. It really can. I do, like in my former position, when I was a family support specialist, I did get summers off, but now I don't. I'm a year-round baby, so yeah.
Gotcha. Well, yeah, hopefully all the new online platforms that everybody's adjusted to makes that planning just a little bit easier.
Oh yeah.
Because I imagine that people, they'll be able to like turn on their phone wherever they are and just be part of the meeting, even if they can't
Mhm.
be there. And so I was curious about your virtual programs. So how is that going to work for those parents? Is it going to be a thing where they tune in with their kids there and like both the kids and the parents get to interact with the not a podcast with the virtual event, or is it more like a informational session for parents that they would then take and like teach to their children to get them ready for that transition? Or I guess I want to know like what the layout of the virtual events was going to be like.
Yeah, so the virtual Kinder Camp is going to be a mix of all of those things that you mentioned. It's going to be some, student-focused activities. It's going to be some parent-focused activities, and then there'll be a lot of parent-child things that can be done. Because with 4 and 5-year-olds, their attention span is very, 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 very short. So we have to be really intentional about the programming that we're going to do, so the teachers and the site admins for the programs, they are providing content that will have the kids sitting to do a little things. It'll have parents sitting with the kids to do things. It'll have like little breaks in between where parents and kids can kind of do things together, and then they can tune back in like, in 30 minutes or an hour. And then we'll have some parent meetings in between where parents will be able to kind of ask questions about, pre-K and kindergarten, about what to expect when they get in the building, just to kind of give them a little heads up about what to expect when they get to school.
Got you. And how many people do you estimate being part of the program?
Wow, that's a good question. This is the first year that we're doing this, so we're hoping for great numbers, but we're not really sure what to expect because it is virtual, and a lot of the schools, a lot of the teachers that have been doing virtual learning since March. We've gotten a lot of feedback from them, and it's very sporadic in terms of like, are the kids tuning in, the participation, it's not the same as if they were in person. So we're not really sure how many children to expect. Like when we had in-person kinder camp, we had about 400 students that participated that
Wow.
summer. But with it being virtual, we're pretty sure it'll probably be less, just kind of depending, because some parents are a little virtually tapped out right now. Like, you know, they don't want to
Yeah.
do anything more more with virtual learning. But then we have a lot of parents that are like, yes, let's go, let's do this. I need to get my child ready and active and still focused on stuff before we get back to school. We don't want them to lose or you know, we want them to retain things. So we're hoping for big numbers like that, but at this point, we're not really sure kind of what to expect. We're, you know, we're just hoping we'll get a good, you know, who we reach will have great benefits from what we give them.
And is this program is it for all of APS or is it just for the 3 clusters?
So it's for all of APS. We have about 13 APS schools that are going to be doing a virtual kinder camp program. And then we have a virtual, a district-wide virtual program that will be provided by the Office of Early Learning, which I work for. So those kids that will not primarily feed into those 13 schools, those kids will have an opportunity to still participate with the virtual district-wide option.
Got you. And so I wanted to ask, I think I asked you this before too, but I'm sure there are many people who are going to be watching who are curious as to what the transition is going to look like for this upcoming semester, you know, given COVID and everything that's happening. Is it looking like this year, or at least the start of it, might be more virtual, or is it going to be like the kids are back in school?
Well, that's a great question. Atlanta Public Schools, they are trying to make a decision, and we're hoping that that decision is going to come either this week or early next week, which they have stated that they're trying to make that decision by. So what they have proposed are 3 models for going back to school. The first one is a face-to-face model in which, you know, the kids will be back in the classroom, but that is only if there is like no to low risk from COVID. The second model is a virtual model, which is the full virtual, still being at home. You'll tune in, you know, via computer to your teacher, all of that. And that is if we're still in that, we're still at a high risk of COVID exposure. And then there's also a hybrid model in which there will be like half virtual and half face-to-face. So what that'll look like is that, you know, it's like an ABA type thing where they might go to school, you know, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and then Tuesday and Thursday they may be home. And then they're also thinking about splitting it to where it might be like certain grade levels will only be in the building on certain days. So it's still, so we have had an opportunity as a staff in APS to vote on what model through a survey, as well as the parents were able to vote. And based on that feedback, they will make a decision. And based on, you know, health models and things like that, they will make a decision whether we will be either, what model we will go towards.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I know it can't be an easy decision.
Oh no, I hate to be in the position of those who have to make that decision.
Yeah.
Which is very hard because, you know, we want to make sure that we are safe, but at the same time, you know, we still need to make sure we're educating our kids and our families, but we still need to be safe.
Yeah. And I guess the good thing about when COVID started is that with that having to rapidly transition to a virtual platform, you know, they at least have a backup in the virtual space if, you know, something does happen and we have to go back to being fully online again. You know, at least we have something there to rely on as a platform. But yeah, I definitely do not envy them being in that position. So this is kind of a different question, but I want to ask you, so how did you come to find being a early learning transition specialist? Was this what you wanted to do when you originally went to Spelman and Clark to get your master's in social work, or did you just like happen to find it and then just fall in love with the role?
Well, when I was back in college, I didn't even know that, roles like this existed. So, and that's a key point for like anyone that's in school right now in the college arena, that and they're still trying to figure out what they want to do. You know, it's so good to kind of maybe get like exposure about whatever field that you want to be in. It's great to talk to people that are actually in the arena that you want to, because you really don't know like what types of jobs are out there. So when I started off at Spelman, I started off I actually started off as a biology major, and that really kicked my butt. So I was like, okay, let me pump my brakes before I flunk out here. So, and then I switched to psychology because I loved, the psychology aspect of health. So I stayed in that arena, and I got to know a lot about, child development and just the psyche of people. And then when I got to Clark Atlanta and went into the social work field, I was already working in a position that did family services for kids who were a part of the Georgia Lottery pre-K program. And what I would do was go out to the daycare centers and, speak with the parents and just provide like resources to the families and things like that. So I really enjoyed doing that. And so when I went to Clark Atlanta, I wanted to stay in the social work field and got my master's in social work. And long story short, like I was in Fulton County doing the same type of job for their pre-kindergarten program, providing resources and support to the families in that program. And then got into Atlanta Public Schools doing the same thing, but it was with the Head Start program. So, I really, from that first job that I had with doing that with daycare centers, I really developed a love for the education side of supporting families in early education. I got to see like what a critical thing that was for families, that initial stage of just beginning school and just beginning, just the things to do to make sure that young children are ready for school. I always had like a deep desire to try to be like an advocate for those types of families who may not know what to expect or what to do when they get to school. So, doing that really gave me a great appreciation. And so when I went into Atlanta Public Schools and did support services for their pre-kindergarten program, the program was funded by Head Start. So, and Head Start is a great organization that supports the total family, from their health, their mental health, to the educational side. And so in doing that, I got great exposure and loved doing that. And so once the position of school transition specialist came open, I saw a way of connecting like what I did for public schools to that with the Early Learning Center and the exposure that I got through the previous experiences that I've had. So I thought it was a great way to just kind of mirror the two and continue doing that support services for the family. So that's pretty much why this position really drew me to it. I was like, yeah, this is perfect. I'm going to enjoy this, yes.
Yeah, it really sounds like it. And I'm sure all the parents love having you around to just be able to help them through that process. Because I couldn't even imagine like where you would start on your own.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love it. And I love, engaging with the parents and, getting their thoughts together, because, a lot of the times we miss parents' voices when they're the most important people that we need to hear from in terms of, you know, educating children and you know, they know their child best, what they want for their child. So we, you know, I just enjoy like sitting and talking to them and finding about their journey and the things that they go through on a daily basis as parents to just try to make it, you know, every day and to still provide what they need for their child.
Yeah, definitely. Because that's really incredible work. And so my last question for you, this is kind of like changing topics a little bit, but I want to ask you, so how did you end up finding out about GYF?
So I found out about GYF, and you know, so Lauren Hamilton is actually my sister, and so I don't know if she told y'all that,
Mhm.
but she was always doing great things about with GYF, and I got to meet Angelou and James like years ago before they had even started GYF, and but Lauren would always keep me up to date as to the great things that Angelou and James are doing with GYF, and you know how they've gotten this program off the ground and running, and it was just amazing. And she told me about, you know, the board and opportunity that they have to have another member, and I was like, well, I don't know if I want to just be on the board and you my sister, and everybody's gonna be like, oh, okay, she just got in because you know. But I mean, I've always had an appreciation for, you know, being involved with making sure that your environment is, you know, clean and healthy and safe, and what recycling is about, and, you know, just learning about sustainability and how important that is. And, you know, once that opportunity came about, and she was like, you know, you should apply. You really should. I think this would be a great opportunity for you to get involved and to experience some of the great things that GYF is doing. And then once I spoke with Angelou about it, my mind was blown because she really spoke to the heart of GYF and the importance of making sure that minorities are in these types of positions, and that this type of exposure is given to our kids and our students. And I thought about, you know, where I was with Atlanta Public Schools, where I've been with Fulton County Schools, and I have been in the trenches with, you know, children, minority children, children of color, African American children, and I see the types of things from all different socioeconomic backgrounds, and I would see the importance of making sure that our kids have that exposure to an appreciation of nature, and an appreciation for making sure that their environment is going to be here years after, you know, they're gone, and that green spaces are available. And, you know, so when I spoke with Angelou, she just had me sold. I was like, wow, this is an awesome organization, an awesome opportunity for me to mirror what I do on the education side with that on the green side, and just kind of make sure that young children, young African American children, young minority kids have that opportunity and that exposure to that, just that.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. And before I wrapped up, Yero, did you have anything you want to say or any questions?
Absolutely. One of the most instrumental things in a student's life is their parent. How do you guys stay involved with inactive and non-retentive parents? Sometimes, you know, parents aren't always there to encourage that child throughout, you know, their learning. And I think you guys have an instrumental role in what you guys do. So when you find parents who are busy or working because they have two jobs or something like that, how do you encourage the student to stay involved and stay connected, as well as retain the information?
Yeah, that has been like, as someone in the education field, that's always like the number one thing that is the biggest challenge for all of us. I usually work from from the perspective of making sure that you find whatever it is that is the best strength for that parent. A lot of parents are working, they're juggling how many jobs, and they can't get to every PTA meeting, they can't get to every conference. But you kind of have to meet the parent where they are. Like if you can get them on a phone call, and it may take a little sacrifice for you, which I have learned. It may take me calling a parent like at 6 or 7 o'clock, which is way past my hours. But in order to meet that parent where that parent is, that's what I would have to do. Like you kind of have to get away from your old way of thinking and know that, a parent they're trying. Every parent wants their child to succeed. Like a majority want their child to succeed. And they're going to try to do whatever they can to accommodate or be available. So if I have to make sure that I call somebody way past my hours, I'll do that. Or if it takes me writing a note to a parent and putting it in a book bag just to kind of keep them abreast about things. If a parent can only make it to one meeting and that's all they can do, we kind of grab everything and meet them at that one meeting, because it is a challenge. And then there are parents that, they may not be as receptive as you would like them to be, and that's the nature of the beast. But your efforts don't cease there. You're making sure that you're still providing the best that you can for that child, even though that parent may not be as receptive to things as you would like them to be. But your job is to still continue to provide that service. So it takes a little of knowing yourself and making sure that you know that everything is not going to fall in line the way you want it to, and you may have to stretch yourself a little bit and do something a little bit different in order to kind of meet this parent where they are. And you also have to function from the perspective that, the parent is trying to do all that they can to support their child. Now, they may not do it in the way that you want it to be done, but they're trying. As long as you're trying, I'm trying. And that's the way I usually try to function in that when dealing with parents and their different schedules and things, and just trying to make sure that the service is provided for them.
Awesome. That's really valuable. I think that's super important. My mother, she's a teacher, and I call her the Black Miss Frizzle, because she's out there implementing as much science as she can. And sometimes she meets parents who aren't necessarily wanting to retain that, sciencey stuff. Sometimes it just seems like something you can brush off. But what would you say to newcoming teachers and people who feel like this is something that they want to embark on, and enriching children's lives is what we're put on this earth to do?
My best advice would be, like I said before, know yourself, know your environment, know, the kids that you're working with, the families that you're working with, and just know that it's not a cookie cutter situation, especially when you're dealing with people and their lives and, different situations. And our kids come from so many different backgrounds. You're not going to meet a child that, they have two parents, or, you may have a parent that's grandparents are raising kids these days. So you have to know yourself. You have to know the kids that you're working with. You have to know that every day is a different day. Every day, one day may be a great day, the next day may not be a great day. But you have to know that your heart is what's going to lead you. You can't do it just expecting a paycheck. And there are people that, that's just life. That's how it is. But knowing that and knowing your heart will help drive you better in this position, because there's so many different things that you're going to be dealing with. There's things that you probably never thought you would see in your lifetime pertaining to a child that you would see. So you have to be able to know what you can handle and how to handle it, and how to, dry those tears when you see it and keep going the next day, because those kids need you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That's all the questions I have.
So, well, yeah, I just wanted to say thank you again, Adrienne, for being on the podcast with us. This was amazing. And even just for me, like getting to learn about your position, because I had like no idea what a transition specialist was. And like now that I hear it, it makes so much sense that we have somebody doing this work because it's hugely important for, you know, not just the parents, but for the growth and development of that child to have somebody there with them at every step as, you know, they're learning about the world, they're going to school, you know, taking classes and basically growing into a young adult. So yeah, just thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I had a really great time talking to you, and I'm really looking forward to working with you more. And also, yeah, welcome to GYF.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate this. And thanks for, making this so comfortable and easy to do. Cause I was like, oh, I couldn't be on a podcast. I don't know what to say. But thank you guys so much. This was awesome. I really appreciate it.